The door that changes everything. Ethan Cole's hand froze on the door latch the moment he saw the child. Not because she was there, plenty of drifters brought kids through Wyoming, but because of what flickered in her eyes when she looked at his porch, his boots, the worn wood beneath her feet. Recognition. Like she'd already decided this broken-down ranch was home. Behind her stood a woman with flour dust on her sleeves and exhaustion carved into her face, asking for work she clearly desperately needed. Ethan should have said no. Should have sent them back to whatever town had spit them out. Instead, he stepped aside. If you're watching from somewhere in this big world of ours, drop a comment with your city below. I want to see just how far this story travels. And if it touches something in you, hit that like button. Now settle in, because what happens next changed 3 lives forever. The Wyoming wind carried dust and the smell of coming rain when Mara Whitfield first saw the Cole Ranch. It wasn't much. A weathered house that leaned slightly south, a barn that had seen better decades, fences that spoke of constant repair. But it was standing, which was more than could be said for most of her hopes lately. Lily's small hand tightened in hers as they approached. The girl hadn't spoken much since they'd left Cheyenne 3 days ago, just watched the world with those solemn gray eyes that seemed too old for 7 years. "Mama?" Lily whispered. "Is this it?" Mara looked down at her daughter, at the dirt on her dress, and the careful way she held herself, like she was afraid of taking up too much space in the world. Something in Mara's chest cracked a little more. "Might be, sweetheart. Might be." The house door opened before they reached the porch. The man who filled the doorway was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that came from years under an unforgiving sun. His eyes were dark, guarded, and when they landed on Mara, she saw a wariness that matched her own. "Help you?" His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. Mara straightened her spine. She'd practiced this speech for 3 days, refined it with every mile. "Mr. Cole, my name is Mara Whitfield. This is my daughter, Lily. I heard in town you might be looking for a cook. I can work. I'm clean, reliable, and I don't ask questions." Ethan Cole's gaze dropped to Lily, and something shifted in his expression. Not softening, exactly, but something less armored. The child stared back at him with frank curiosity. Her head tilted slightly. "Don't need a cook," he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "You're feeding 12 ranch hands," Mara said, pulling the information she'd gathered at the general store. "Old Sam Harris told me your last cook quit 6 weeks ago. Said the men are living on jerky and whatever they can burn over a fire without supervision." A muscle worked in Ethan's jaw. "Sam talks too much." "Sam talks exactly enough." Mara took a breath. "I can make 3 meals a day for 15 men without breaking a sweat. I can bake bread that won't break teeth. I can stretch a food budget further than you'd think possible. And I can keep a kitchen clean enough to eat off the floor." She paused. "I need this job, Mr. Cole, but you need a cook. Seems like we might be able to help each other." Ethan's eyes moved between Mara and Lily, something unreadable crossing his face. The silence stretched long enough that Mara felt her carefully constructed courage beginning to fray. Then Lily spoke, her voice small but clear. "You have horses." It wasn't a question. She was looking past Ethan, toward the barn where 2 horses stood in the corral, their coats gleaming copper in the afternoon light. "I do," Ethan said, and for the first time his voice gentled slightly. "I like horses," Lily said. "I won't bother them, though. I'm good at not bothering things." Something flickered across Ethan's face. Pain, maybe, or recognition of something he didn't want to name. He looked at Mara again, and she could see him wrestling with something internal, some decision that mattered more than just hiring a cook. $2 a week, he said finally, plus room and board. There's a small cabin behind the main house. Hasn't been used in a while, but it's sound. You cook 3 meals a day, keep the kitchen clean, and handle the washing up. Don't expect conversation, and don't expect the men to be gentle company. They're good workers, but they're rough. Relief flooded through Mara so suddenly she had to lock her knees to keep from swaying. "That's more than fair." "One more thing." Ethan's eyes were serious. "I don't tolerate theft, and I don't tolerate lies. You cross me on either count, you're gone that day. Understood?" "Understood." Mara met his gaze steadily. "Same goes for you. You mistreat my daughter in any way, I'll be gone before you can blink. We clear?" Something that might have been respect flickered in Ethan's eyes. "Clear." He stepped back from the doorway, a gesture of invitation that seemed to cost him something. Mara took Lily's hand and climbed the porch steps, aware of how her worn boots sounded against the wood, how threadbare their traveling clothes had become. Inside, the house was dim and smelled of dust and loneliness. Mara's practiced eye took in details quickly. Good bones, but neglected. Floors that needed scrubbing, windows that hadn't been properly cleaned in months, furniture that wanted polish and care. It was the house of a man who'd forgotten how to see his surroundings, who moved through rooms like a ghost in his own life. "Kitchen's through there," Ethan said, nodding toward a doorway. "Cabin's out back. I'll show you." He led them through the house and out the back door, where a small structure stood about 30 yards from the main house. It was simple. One room with a wood stove, a narrow bed, a table, and 2 chairs. But it had real glass windows and a door that latched properly, and to Mara, it looked like salvation. "I'll have one of the men bring bedding," Ethan said. "Firewood's in the shed. Supper's at 6, breakfast at 5, lunch at noon." He paused at the door. "The work's hard, Mrs. Whitfield. If you can't handle it—" "I can handle it," Mara said firmly. "And it's Miss Whitfield." His eyes flickered with understanding, though he didn't comment on it, just nodded and left them there, his footsteps fading across the dusty ground. Lily immediately went to the window, pressing her hands against the glass. "Mama, I can see the horses from here." Mara joined her, looking out at the ranch spreading before them, the barn, the corrals, the endless Wyoming sky. It wasn't what she'd planned. Nothing in her life had gone according to plan, but it was a roof, work, and safety. For now, that was enough. "What do you think, sweetheart?" she asked. Lily was quiet for a moment, her breath fogging the glass. "I think Mr. Cole is sad." Out of the mouths of children, Mara thought. Maybe so. But not mean sad, just lonely sad. Mara pulled her daughter close, resting her chin on top of Lily's head. "Well, we're not here to fix anyone's loneliness. We're here to work and build ourselves a life. You remember that?" "Yes, Mama." But even as she said it, Mara felt the lie of it. She'd seen the way Ethan Cole looked at Lily, like seeing a ghost and a promise all at once. She'd seen the careful blankness in his eyes when he looked at the house, the way he moved through it without really seeing it. This was a man drowning in his own silence, and Mara knew better than most how dangerous that could be. The bedding arrived an hour later, delivered by a grizzled ranch hand who introduced himself as Buck and looked at Mara with the frank assessment of someone evaluating a workhorse. "You really know how to cook?" he asked, dumping the blankets on the table. "I really do." "Last cook we had couldn't tell a skillet from a saddle. Gave us food poisoning 3 times before the boss finally sent him packing." "I won't poison you," Mara said dryly. "Can't promise you'll like everything I make, but you won't die from it." Buck's weathered face cracked into something like a smile. "Fair enough. Kitchen's got supplies, but they're scattered to hell and back. Boss hasn't set foot in there since—" He caught himself. "Well, in a while." "Since when?" Mara asked, sensing something important. Buck shifted uncomfortably. "Not my story to tell, ma'am. Just be patient with him. He's had his share of hurt." After Buck left, Mara made her way to the main house kitchen. What she found made her wince. Supplies were indeed scattered. Flour in 3 different containers, beans mixed with rice, dried goods that had been attacked by mice. The stove was caked with grease, the floor sticky with spilled food, and someone had apparently tried to cook something that had burned so badly the pot had been abandoned in the sink. She rolled up her sleeves. Lily appeared in the doorway, watching. "Can I help?" "You can sit at that table and tell me a story," Mara said. "I work better with company." So while Mara scrubbed and organized, Lily spun tales about the places they'd passed through, the people they'd seen. She had a gift for it, this daughter of hers, a way of noticing small details and weaving them into something larger. The way a woman had held her baby in Laramie. The pattern of stars they'd seen their first night sleeping outdoors. The sound the wind made through prairie grass. Mara listened and worked, her hands finding their rhythm. This at least she knew how to do. Order from chaos, cleanliness from filth, purpose from desperation. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, the kitchen had been transformed. The stove gleamed, the floor was clean enough to prove it, and Mara had taken stock of what she had to work with. Not much, but enough. She could make enough. The ranch hands began filtering in around 5:45, tired men with dust on their clothes and hunger in their eyes. They stopped short when they saw the kitchen, saw Mara at the stove, saw the table that had been set with actual plates and forks. "Well, I'll be damned," one of them muttered. "Watch your language," Buck said, nodding toward Lily, who sat in the corner with a book Mara had salvaged from their belongings. "We got a little one present." The men shuffled in, awkward and suddenly aware of their own roughness. Mara served them beef stew. Nothing fancy, but rich with the vegetables she'd found in the root cellar, thick with gravy, accompanied by biscuits she'd managed to throw together with 20 minutes' notice. She watched them eat, saw the surprise on their faces when they realized the food was good. Actually good. Some of them went back for seconds, then thirds. The conversation was sparse at first, then gradually loosened as bellies filled and the day's tension eased. Ethan came in last, moving through the room like he hoped to pass unnoticed. He stopped when he saw the kitchen, saw the men actually sitting at the table instead of grabbing food and scattering. His eyes found Mara, and something complicated passed across his face. "Mr. Cole," she said, ladling stew into a bowl. "Your supper." He took it without speaking, found a seat at the far end of the table. The men made room for him without comment, a practiced deference that spoke of long habit. Mara served Lily and herself, taking seats at the kitchen counter where they could eat without intruding on the men's space. She caught fragments of conversation, talk of fence repairs, a sick calf, weather predictions, the everyday currency of ranch life. And she caught Ethan watching Lily, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes betraying something else. Hunger, maybe. Not for food, but for something he'd lost and didn't know how to want again. After supper, the men filed out with genuine thanks, their manners rough but sincere. Buck lingered at the door. "Ma'am, that was the finest meal we've had in 2 years," he said. "You keep cooking like that. The boss would be a fool to let you go." "I intend to keep cooking exactly like that," Mara said. When they were gone, she turned to find Ethan still at the table, his bowl empty, his hands flat on the scarred wood. "I'll do the washing up," she said. "You don't need to—" "Why'd you really come here?" he asked, his voice low. Mara stilled. Lily had fallen asleep in the corner chair, exhausted from the day's journey. She looked at the stranger who'd given them shelter, trying to gauge how much truth he could handle. "Because I needed work," she said carefully. "Because I have a daughter to feed and no husband to provide for her. Because sometimes you take the opportunities available, not the ones you'd choose if the world was different." Ethan's dark eyes held hers. "You running from something?" "Everyone's running from something, Mr. Cole. Question is whether you're running towards something better or just away from something worse." "Which are you doing?" "Both," she said honestly. "Is that going to be a problem?" He stood, his chair scraping against the clean floor. "Long as you cook like you did tonight and don't bring trouble to my door, I don't care what you're running from." "Fair enough." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Your daughter, she always that quiet?" Mara's protective instincts flared. "She's had a hard road. She's learning to trust the world again." Something painful crossed Ethan's face. "Yeah, I know something about that." He left before she could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Mara gathered Lily into her arms, feeling the weight of her sleeping child, the trust implicit in that relaxed body. She'd made a lot of mistakes in her life, taken wrong turns that had led to hard places. But Lily was the thing she'd done right, the one good choice in a string of bad ones. And she'd be damned if she'd let anyone hurt this child or take her away, even if it meant staying in this lonely ranch with a man who looked at her daughter like she was a doorway to somewhere he couldn't go. The days fell into rhythm with surprising speed. Mara woke before dawn, had coffee ready when the men stumbled in for breakfast at 5. She learned their preferences. Buck liked his eggs scrambled. Young Tommy couldn't stomach anything too spicy. Old Pete needed his coffee strong enough to strip paint. She fed them well and kept the kitchen immaculate, and in return they treated her with rough courtesy and Lily with unexpected gentleness. It was Ethan who remained an enigma. He ate with the men but rarely spoke. He worked harder than any of them. Mara could see it in the way he moved, the exhaustion that lined his face at day's end. He was driving himself towards something or away from something, and she suspected it was the same thing that made him look at Lily with such carefully controlled longing. A week into their stay, she found him in the barn late one evening, mending tack by lamplight. Lily had been asking about the horses all week, and Mara had been putting her off, unsure of the boundaries. "Mr. Cole," she said from the doorway, "could I speak with you?" He looked up, his hand stilling on the leather. "Something wrong?" "No, just Lily's been asking about the horses. She loves them, always has. I wanted to know if it would be all right for her to visit the barn sometimes." "Under supervision, of course." "I wouldn't let her." "She can come whenever she wants," Ethan said, cutting off her careful speech. "Long as she's careful and doesn't spook them." Mara blinked, surprised by the quick agreement. Thank you." "Had a daughter once," he said abruptly, his voice rough. "She loved horses, too." The words hung in the dim barn, heavy with grief. Mara stood very still, afraid to speak, afraid to shatter whatever had made him offer this piece of himself. "Sarah was 6 when the fever took her," Ethan continued, his eyes on the tack in his hands. "My wife, Anne, died 3 days later. Same sickness. I tried everything, but I couldn't save either of them." He looked up at Mara, his eyes hollow. "That was 2 years ago. Haven't been able to look at Sarah's things since. They're still in her room, exactly as she left them." "I'm so sorry," Mara said softly. "Don't want your pity," he said, but without heat. "Just wanted you to understand. Your girl reminds me of her sometimes. Same way of looking at the world like she's trying to memorize it. Same quiet. It's hard, but it's also—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Also what?" Mara prompted gently. "Also the first time this place has felt like something other than a tomb," he admitted. "The first time I've walked through that kitchen and remembered what it was like when it was alive." Mara's throat tightened. "We're not here to replace anyone, Mr. Cole. We can't be that for you." "I know." He returned to his work, his movements careful and practiced. "Doesn't change what you are, though. Doesn't change that this ranch feels different with you in it." Mara wanted to say something wise, something that would ease the pain she heard in his voice, but there were no words for that kind of grief, no comfort that wouldn't ring hollow. So she just nodded and left him to his solitary work. That night, lying in their small cabin with Lily curled against her side, Mara stared at the ceiling and wondered what they'd walked into. A job, yes. Safety, certainly. But also something more complicated. A man rebuilding himself one day at a time. A house that remembered laughter. A grief so deep it had reshaped the land around it. She'd come here running from her own past, her own mistakes. But she was beginning to understand that running only worked if you knew where you were going. And she had no idea where this road led. The second week brought rain. Not the gentle kind, but the angry Wyoming variety that turned the ground to mud and kept everyone trapped indoors. The men grew restless, playing cards in the bunkhouse, their voices carrying across the yard. Mara used the time to bake bread, pies, cookies that filled the kitchen with warmth and sweetness. Lily helped, her small hands learning to knead dough, to crimp pie crusts, to measure flour without spilling too much. "Mama?" Lily said on the third day of rain. "Why does Mr. Cole eat alone?" Mara looked out the window, where she could see Ethan in the barn, working despite the weather. "Some people prefer their own company, sweetheart." "Is it because he's sad about his family?" Mara's hand stilled on the dough she was working. "Who told you about his family?" "Nobody told me. I just know." Lily's gray eyes were serious. "The house remembers them. You can feel it in the rooms." Children saw things adults tried to ignore, Mara thought. Felt things that people with more years learned to rationalize away. "Yes," she said quietly. "He's sad about his family. Very sad." "We could make him less sad," Lily suggested. "We're good at making things better." "Oh, sweetheart." Mara pulled her daughter close. "We can't fix everyone's sadness. Sometimes all we can do is be kind and let people heal in their own time." But Lily's words stayed with her. And that evening, when Mara served supper, she made Ethan a plate and carried it to the barn. He looked up when she entered, surprise crossing his face. Something wrong with the kitchen? Kitchen's fine. Thought you might like to eat somewhere dry for a change. She set the plate on a workbench. And I wanted to thank you. For what? For letting Lily visit the horses. She talks about them constantly. It's brought some light back to her eyes. Ethan's expression softened slightly. She's good with them. Got a gentle hand. Yesterday she spent an hour brushing Copper, talking to him the whole time. Horse has never looked better. She has a gift with animals, Mara agreed. Always has. Where's her father? The question came abruptly, as if he'd been holding it back and it finally broke free. Mara had known this would come eventually. Dead. Killed in a mining accident in Colorado 3 years ago. We've been making our own way since. It was close enough to the truth. James Whitfield was dead. That part wasn't a lie. The circumstances were more complicated, but some stories didn't need all their details told. Hard thing, raising a child alone, Ethan said. Hard thing living alone with ghosts, Mara countered gently. Their eyes met, and in that moment there was understanding. Two people trying to survive their own different griefs, their own different losses. Eat your supper before it gets cold, Mara said. And Mr. Cole? You're welcome at the kitchen table any time. The men won't mind. She left before he could respond, but the next evening he came to the table, sat with the men, spoke little, but was there. And the evening after that, and the one after that. Small changes, barely noticeable. But Mara had learned that small changes were often the ones that mattered most. The house was waking up, room by room, day by day, and so, she suspected, was the man who lived in it. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Mara discovered Sarah's room. She'd been looking for extra linens, following Buck's directions to the upstairs hall closet, when she opened the wrong door. The afternoon light slanted through lace curtains, illuminating a space frozen in time. A small bed with a patchwork quilt, a wooden rocking horse in the corner, a shelf of books and a porcelain doll sitting in a tiny chair. Dust motes danced in the air, and everything was exactly as a child had left it. Mara's hand trembled on the doorknob. She should leave, close the door, pretend she'd never seen this shrine to grief. But something held her there, looking at the careful way the quilt was folded, the precise arrangement of toys, the love embedded in every object. I asked you not to go in there. Ethan's voice came from behind her, low and strained. Mara turned to find him at the top of the stairs, his face rigid with barely controlled emotion. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I was looking for linens. Buck said the closet was up here, and I opened the wrong door. I didn't mean... Just close it, he said. Please. Mara pulled the door shut gently, the latch clicking with a finality that echoed in the hallway. Ethan stood there, his jaw working, his hands clenched at his sides. 2 years, he said finally. 2 years and I haven't been able to touch anything in that room. Can't pack it away, can't give it away, can't even look at it without... He broke off, turning away. You must think I'm pathetic. I think you're a father who loved his daughter, Mara said softly. There's nothing pathetic about that. Anne would have hated this, he continued as if he hadn't heard her. She was practical. She would have told me to move forward, to let go, to stop living in the past. But I can't. Every time I think about touching Sarah's things, it feels like losing her all over again. Mara moved closer, careful not to crowd him. Grief doesn't follow a schedule, Mr. Cole. It doesn't care about what's practical or what other people think you should do. It just is. He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. How did you do it? After your husband died, how did you keep going? I had Lily, Mara said simply. I had a reason to get up every morning, even when I wanted to stay in bed and let the world pass by. And I had to believe that James would have wanted her to have a good life, even if he couldn't be here to give it to her. It was more truth than she'd intended to share, and she saw Ethan absorb it, turning it over in his mind. Anne would have liked you, he said quietly. She had that same straight spine, that same way of saying hard truths without apology. I would have liked to know her, Mara said, and meant it. They stood there in the quiet hallway, two people who'd learned to carry impossible weights, and for a moment the load felt slightly lighter. "The linens are in the closet at the end of the hall," Ethan said finally. "The one with the blue door." "Thank you." He started down the stairs, then paused. "Miss Whitfield, that room stays closed, but thank you for understanding." After he left, Mara found the linens and returned to her work. But the image of that carefully preserved room stayed with her, a reminder that this house held more than just a lonely man and hired help. It held the weight of love and loss, the terrible cost of opening your heart and having it shattered. And it made her wonder what she was doing here, letting Lily get attached to this place, to these people, when their own story was built on secrets that could unravel everything. That evening, she watched Lily in the barn with Ethan, the two of them grooming the horses together. He was showing her how to curry in gentle circles, his large hands guiding her small ones, and Lily was laughing, actually laughing, in a way Mara hadn't heard in months. "They're good together," Buck said, appearing at her elbow. "Haven't seen the boss smile like that since before the sickness." "He's teaching her well," Mara said carefully. "Doing more than that," Buck observed. "He's remembering what it's like to be human instead of just a machine for working yourself to death." Mara glanced at the older man. "You've known him a long time? 10 years? Watched him build this place with Anne, watched Sarah be born, watched him survive what should have killed him." Buck's weathered face was serious. "He's a good man, Miss Whitfield, the kind who deserves a second chance at happiness, even if he doesn't think so. I'm just the cook, Buck." "Sure you are," he said, but his eyes were knowing. "And I'm just an old cowboy who doesn't notice things." He walked away before she could respond, leaving Mara to watch her daughter and her employer, and to feel the dangerous warmth spreading through her chest at the sight of them together. This was a complication she didn't need, couldn't afford, but stopping it seemed about as possible as halting the Wyoming wind. The next morning brought visitors, a fancy carriage rolling up the drive, the kind that didn't belong in ranch country. Mara watched from the kitchen window as a well-dressed man stepped out, followed by a woman in silk so impractical it made Mara want to laugh. Ethan met them in the yard, his body language instantly defensive. Mara couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read the tension in his shoulders, the way he crossed his arms when the man spoke. 20 minutes later, he came into the kitchen, his face dark with anger. "Problem?" Mara asked, kneading bread dough with more force than necessary. "My brother," Ethan said tersely. "Robert. Came all the way from Denver to tell me I should sell the ranch, move to the city, stop wallowing in the past." He grabbed a cup of coffee, his movements sharp. "Brought his wife, Catherine, to back him up. She spent the whole time looking at my house like it was infested with plague." "What did you tell them?" "Told them to mind their own business and get off my land." He took a long drink. "Robert never understood this place. Never understood why Anne and I wanted to build something out here instead of taking his money and living in comfort." Mara shaped the dough into loaves, her hands working from long practice. "Some people can't understand choosing a hard life over an easy one." "It wasn't hard," Ethan said, his voice softening. "Not when Anne was here. Not when Sarah was running through these rooms making enough noise for 10 children. It was loud and messy and perfect, and Robert looked at it like we were playing at poverty." "You're not selling?" "Never." The word was final, absolute. "This ranch is all I have left of them. Every fence post, every board in this house, Anne and I built it together. I'd sooner die than let Robert turn it into some investment property." The fierceness in his voice stirred something in Mara. She recognized that determination, that refusal to let go of what mattered. It was the same thing that had kept her moving forward when everything else fell apart. "Good," she said simply. Ethan looked at her, and something passed between them. Understanding, respect, maybe the beginning of trust. Then Lily burst through the door, her dress muddy, and her face alight with excitement. "Mama, Mr. Cole said I could help feed the horses tomorrow morning. He said I'm responsible enough, and—" She stopped, seeing the tension in the room. "Did I interrupt something?" "Not at all, sweetheart," Mara said. "Go wash up for lunch." After Lily left, Ethan shook his head slightly. "She's got more energy than a spring calf." "She's happy," Mara said. "First time in a long while she's felt safe enough to just be a child." Safe from what? The question was careful, probing. Mara chose her words precisely. From a world that wasn't always kind to a widow and her daughter. From people who thought we should accept whatever charity was offered and be grateful for it. From the kind of men who see a woman alone and think she's fair game. Ethan's expression hardened. Anyone ever hurt her? Hurt you? No, Mara said truthfully, but not for lack of trying. I learned to be careful, to keep moving, to trust my instincts. And my instincts say this place is safe, that you're safe. I'd never, he started. I know, she interrupted. If I thought otherwise, we wouldn't still be here. The conversation settled something between them, established boundaries and assurances that hadn't been spoken before. When Ethan left to return to work, Mara felt the shift. They were no longer just employer and employee. They were two people learning to navigate the complicated territory of mutual respect and carefully offered trust. That night, a storm rolled in with the kind of fury only the high plains could produce. Thunder shook the windows, and lightning turned the sky white. Mara woke to find Lily curled against her, trembling. Mama, I'm scared. It's just weather, sweetheart. Can't hurt us in here. But even as she said it, a tremendous crack split the air, and through the window she saw lightning strike the old cottonwood near the barn. The tree exploded in flames, and suddenly men were shouting, rushing from the bunkhouse toward the barn where terrified horses screamed. Mara grabbed her shawl. Stay here. Lock the door. Mama. Now, Lily. She ran through the rain, her nightgown soaking through immediately. The barn was chaos, horses panicking, men trying to get them out safely before the burning tree could spread fire. Ethan was in the thick of it, wrestling with a terrified mare who refused to leave her stall. Get back, he shouted when he saw Mara. Instead, she moved to the next stall where a gelding was throwing himself against the walls. She'd grown up around horses, knew their language, their fears. She opened the stall door carefully, speaking low and steady. Easy, boy. Easy now. Nobody's going to hurt you. Just need you to trust me. Need you to be brave. The horse's wild eyes found hers, and for a moment they stood in perfect understanding. Then she had his halter, was leading him out into the rain-soaked yard where Buck was corralling the other animals. She went back for another, and another, working alongside the men, until all the horses were safe and the burning tree was being doused with bucket after bucket of water. By the time the crisis was over, Mara was shaking with exhaustion and cold, her hair plastered to her face, her nightgown ruined. Ethan appeared beside her, soot-streaked and breathing hard. That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen. The horses needed help, Mara said through chattering teeth. You could have been killed if that tree had fallen, but it didn't. He stared at her, something fierce and complicated in his eyes, then shook his head. You're going to catch your death standing out here. Go change. I'll check on Lily. Mara wanted to argue, but her body was done. She made it back to the cabin to find Lily exactly where she'd left her, eyes wide with worry. Mama, you're all wet. The horses are safe, Mara said, stripping off her soaked nightgown. That's what matters. As she changed into dry clothes, she heard a knock at the door. Ethan stood there with blankets and a bottle of whiskey. For the shock, he said gruffly, handing both through the door. And Miss Whitfield, thank you. You saved 3 horses tonight that might have died from their own panic. He was gone before she could respond, but his words warmed her more than the whiskey or blankets ever could. The next morning, Mara woke late, her body aching from the night's exertions. She stumbled to the kitchen to find breakfast already made, rough and basic, but edible, and a note in Ethan's angular handwriting. Rest today. Doctor's orders. E.C. Lily came in from the barn, her eyes bright. Mr. Cole made breakfast. It wasn't very good, but the men said they've had worse. And Mama, he let me help check all the horses this morning, and they're all fine. And he told them what you did, and everyone says you're a hero. Mara smiled despite herself. I'm not a hero, sweetheart. I just did what needed doing. That's what heroes do, Lily said seriously. They do what needs doing even when they're scared. Out of the mouths of children, Mara thought again. Over the next few days, something shifted in the ranch's dynamic. The men treated Mara with new respect, a recognition that she was more than just the cook. Buck took to calling her boss lady, until she threatened to put too much salt in his food. Young Tommy started asking her advice about a girl in town he was sweet on. Even Silent Pete began nodding good morning when he came in for breakfast. And Ethan looked at her differently, not with the careful distance he'd maintained before, but with something warmer. Appreciation, maybe. Or the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. She caught him watching her sometimes, his expression unguarded, and felt her traitorous heart respond in ways she couldn't afford. This was a job, she reminded herself, a safe place to land, not a permanent home. Getting attached, letting Lily get attached, was dangerous. But one afternoon, coming back from the root cellar, she heard voices from the barn. Ethan and Lily talking quietly while they worked. "My papa died when I was 4, Lily was saying. "I don't remember much about him. Mama says he was kind." "I'm sure he was," Ethan said gently. "Were you kind to your little girl?" There was a long pause. "I tried to be the kind of father who listened, who made her laugh. I wasn't perfect, but I loved her more than anything in the world." "Mama says love doesn't die just because people do," Lily said. "She says the people we love stay in our hearts forever." "Your mama's a wise woman." "She's sad sometimes too, though. Late at night when she thinks I'm sleeping, I hear her crying." Mara's hand tightened on the vegetables she was carrying. She shouldn't be listening to this, but she couldn't make herself move. "Everybody's sad sometimes," Ethan said. "Even the strongest people. It doesn't make them weak, it makes them human." "Are you still sad about your family?" "Every day," he admitted. "But lately it's different. Still hurts, but it's not all I can feel anymore. There's other things too, good things." "Like what?" "Like teaching a smart little girl about horses. Like having a clean kitchen and good food. Like remembering what it feels like when a house is alive instead of just standing." Mara's throat closed. She backed away quietly, giving them their privacy, giving herself distance from words that threatened to undo every defense she'd built. That evening, she made Ethan's favorite meal, pot roast with potatoes and carrots, apple pie for dessert. She told herself it was just good cooking, just doing her job well. But when he caught her eye across the table and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, she knew she was lying to herself. This was more than a job, more than safety. It was becoming something that could break her heart if she let it. After supper, while the men played cards in the bunkhouse and Lily slept in their cabin, Ethan found Mara on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. "Beautiful evening," he said, leaning against the railing beside her. "They usually are out here," Mara agreed. "Different than the city. Bigger, somehow." "You miss it? City life?" "Sometimes I miss the convenience. Don't miss the crowds, the noise, the way everyone's always in your business." She glanced at him. "You ever think about leaving? Taking your brother's advice?" "Every day right after Anne and Sarah died," he admitted. "Thought about burning the whole place down and walking away, but I couldn't do it. This ranch, it's their legacy. The life we built together. Leaving would feel like saying it didn't matter, that they didn't matter." "They mattered," Mara said softly. "Anyone can see that." "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're good for this place, Miss Whitfield. Good for the men, good for the work, good for—" He trailed off. "Good for?" she prompted. "For me," he said, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. "You and Lily, you've made this ranch feel like a home again, instead of just a place I'm haunting." Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Mr. Cole." "Ethan," he said. "After everything, I think you can call me Ethan." "Ethan," she repeated, tasting his name. "I need you to understand something. Lily and I, we're grateful for this opportunity. More grateful than you know, but we're not here to fix you or replace anyone. We're just trying to build a life, same as you." "I know that," he said. "I do. But knowing it doesn't change what you've done, what you've brought back to this place." He turned to face her fully. "I'm not asking for anything, Mara. Just wanted you to know you're valued here, both of you." The use of her first name sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cooling air. This was dangerous territory, the kind that led to expectations and disappointments and broken hearts. But when she looked at Ethan Cole, at the honesty in his eyes and the careful hope in his expression, she couldn't quite make herself pull away. "We value being here," she said finally. It's the first place in a long time that's felt like we could stop running." "Then stop," he said simply. "Stay. Build something here. Let Lily grow up with horses and wide skies. Let yourself rest." It sounded like heaven. It sounded like everything she'd wanted and couldn't have. It sounded like a lie she might let herself believe just for a little while longer. "I'll think about it," she said, which wasn't a promise but wasn't a refusal either. Ethan nodded, accepting the non-answer, and together they watched the sun sink below the horizon, painting the world in shadows and fading light. Behind them, the house glowed warm with lamplight, and from somewhere in the distance came the sound of men laughing, horses settling for the night, the everyday music of a working ranch. For the first time in 2 years, Ethan Cole stood on his porch and felt something other than grief. And for the first time in 3 years, Mara Whitfield let herself imagine a future that might include something more than survival. Neither of them spoke the thoughts aloud. Some things were too fragile, too new, to be examined too closely. But the silence between them was comfortable, companionable. And when Mara finally excused herself to check on Lily, Ethan's goodnight carried a warmth that stayed with her long into the darkness. The next day brought new challenges, a broken fence that needed mending, supplies to order from town, the endless work of keeping a ranch running. But underneath it all, something had shifted. The men noticed it, the way Ethan and Mara moved around each other with new awareness, the way small courtesies carried extra weight. Buck pulled Mara aside during lunch preparation. "Whatever's happening between you and the boss, it's good for him, good for all of us. Just be careful, Miss Whitfield. He's been hurt enough for one lifetime." "So have I," Mara said quietly. "So has my daughter. We're all just trying not to hurt each other any more than the world already has." "Fair enough," Buck said. "Just remember, this place can be a haven or a trap, depending on what you bring to it. Choose wisely." His words echoed in her mind as she worked, as she watched Lily help Ethan in the barn, as she felt the weight of secrets she carried pressing against her conscience. She'd been truthful about most things, but not everything. And the lies she'd told by omission were the kind that could explode everything if the truth ever came to light. For now, she pushed the worry aside and focused on the present, the bread rising in the warm kitchen, the sound of Lily's laughter, the way Ethan had started humming while he worked. These moments were precious, fragile, and finite. She would protect them as long as she could, knowing that nothing good lasted forever, but hoping desperately that this might last just a little while longer. The stranger arrived on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks into Mara's time at the ranch. She was rolling out pie dough when she heard the unfamiliar horse, looked up to see a well-dressed man dismounting in the yard. Something about the way he moved, smooth, calculated, entitled, sent ice down her spine. Through the window, she watched Ethan approach, his body language immediately guarded. The conversation was brief, the stranger gesturing toward the house while Ethan's posture grew more rigid. Then both men turned toward the kitchen, and Mara's hand stilled on the rolling pin. She knew, somehow, that everything was about to change. Ethan came through the door first, his face carefully neutral but his eyes dark with something that looked like anger. The stranger followed, and up close, Mara could see he was younger than she'd thought, maybe 35, with styled hair and clothes that cost more than most men made in a month. His eyes swept over the kitchen with obvious disdain before landing on Mara. "Miss Whitfield," Ethan said, his voice tight. "This is Leonard Hastings. He says he has business with you." The name meant nothing to Mara, but the way Hastings smiled, cold and proprietary, made her want to grab Lily and run. "Mrs. Whitfield, actually," Hastings corrected smoothly. "Or it was, before she became a widow under such unfortunate circumstances." "I don't know you," Mara said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "What business could you possibly have with me?" Hastings pulled papers from his jacket, laid them on the flour-dusted table. "I represent the estate of James Whitfield. Specifically, I represent the interests of his legal heir." Mara's blood turned to ice. James had no other heirs, just me and Lily. "Ah, but that's where you're mistaken." Hastings' smile widened. "Mr. Whitfield had a daughter from a previous marriage. A marriage that was never properly dissolved before he married you, which makes your union invalid, and your daughter—" He paused for effect. Illegitimate. The word hung in the air like poison. Mara felt the room tilt, felt everything she'd built threatening to crumble. "That's a lie," she said, but her voice wavered. "James told me he'd never been married before." James Whitfield told a lot of lies, apparently. Hastings tapped the papers. "These documents prove otherwise. They also prove that his legitimate daughter, my ward, Miss Caroline Whitfield, has legal claim to any children born of his subsequent relationships, including your Lily." "You can't," Mara started, but Hastings cut her off. "I can, and I will. Miss Caroline deserves to know her sister. As the child's legal guardian, I'm prepared to take custody immediately." "Over my dead body," Mara said, her voice deadly quiet. Ethan moved then, placing himself slightly between Mara and Hastings. "You need to leave, now." "I have legal rights," Hastings said, unperturbed. "The court in Cheyenne has already reviewed my petition. I have authority to remove the child from unsuitable circumstances." "My daughter is in perfectly suitable circumstances," Mara said, her hands clenching into fists. "She's fed, clothed, safe, and loved. You have no right—" "I have every right," Hastings interrupted. "But I'm a reasonable man. I understand a mother's attachment, so I'm prepared to offer you a choice." He pulled out another paper. "Sign over custody voluntarily, and I'll ensure you have visitation rights. Refuse, and I'll have the sheriff remove the child by force. Either way, Miss Caroline gets what's rightfully hers, her sister." Mara stared at the paper, at the elegant script that would sign away her daughter, her reason for breathing, the only good thing in her life. Her mind raced, looking for escape routes, for weapons, for anything that would stop this nightmare. "These papers," Ethan said, his voice hard. "They've been verified by a judge?" "Judge Morrison in Cheyenne," Hastings confirmed. "All perfectly legal." "Morrison's in Robert's pocket," Ethan said quietly to Mara. "My brother uses him for his business deals. The man would sign anything for the right price." Hastings' smooth expression cracked slightly. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Cole. One you can't prove." "Can I?" Ethan moved to the door. "Buck, get in here." The older ranch hand appeared, reading the tension in the room immediately. "Boss?" "Ride to town. Telegraph my brother in Denver. Tell him I need the name of the best lawyer he knows, and I need them here by tomorrow." Ethan's eyes never left Hastings. "Then stop by the sheriff's office. Tell Tom we've got a situation that needs his attention." "You're wasting your time," Hastings said. "The law is clear." "The law can be unclear when the right questions get asked," Ethan shot back. "Like why a man claiming to represent a child's interests shows up at a remote ranch instead of going through proper channels. Like why these papers smell like forgery and coercion. Like why you're so eager to take a 7-year-old girl from her mother without so much as a character witness or home inspection." Hastings's jaw tightened. "You're interfering in legal matters that don't concern you." "That's where you're wrong," Ethan said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Everything on this ranch concerns me, including the safety of a woman and child under my protection." The two men stared at each other, and Mara saw something flicker in Hastings' eyes. Calculation, reassessment. He'd expected an easy mark, a frightened woman alone. He hadn't expected Ethan Cole. "I'll be back," Hastings said finally, gathering his papers. "With the sheriff if necessary. You're only delaying the inevitable, Mr. Cole. The child belongs with her legal guardian." "The child belongs with her mother," Ethan said flatly. "Now get off my land." After Hastings left, Mara sank into a chair, her legs giving out. Lily. They wanted to take Lily. The thought alone made her want to vomit. "Mara." Ethan crouched beside her chair, his hands gentle on her arms. "Look at me." She raised her eyes to his, saw strength there, determination. "This isn't over," he said, "but it's not lost either. We'll fight this, whatever it takes." "You don't understand," Mara whispered. "James did have secrets, things he never told me. What if Hastings is right? What if I never had legal claim to Lily?" "Then we'll establish it now," Ethan said firmly. "But first, we need the truth. All of it. Everything you haven't told me about James Whitfield and how he died." Mara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of secrets pressing down. She'd known this moment would come eventually, had dreaded it, had hoped against hope she could avoid it forever. James didn't die in a mining accident, she said quietly. That was the story I told because the truth was worse. He was killed in a saloon fight in Colorado, drunk and gambling away money we didn't have. The man who killed him claimed self-defense, said James pulled a knife first. Maybe he did. James had a temper, especially when he was drinking. And Lily, Ethan prompted gently, is his daughter. I know that with everything I am. I was there when she was born, raised her every day of her life. But James, she swallowed hard. James wasn't always honest. He moved us around a lot, always had some scheme, some new opportunity. I learned not to ask too many questions because the answers were usually lies anyway. Did you love him? The question surprised her. I thought I did at first. He was charming, promised me a better life than working in my father's boarding house. By the time I realized what he really was, I had Lily to think about. I stayed for her, kept us together as best I could. And when he died, she met Ethan's eyes. When he died, I felt guilty for being relieved. What kind of person does that make me? Human, Ethan said simply. It makes you human. He stood, paced to the window. This Hastings, you ever hear James mention him? Or a daughter named Caroline? Never. But James had a whole life before me that I knew nothing about. He could have had 3 wives and a dozen children for all I know. We'll find out, Ethan said. The lawyer my brother sends will dig into this, verify these claims. And until we know the truth, Hastings doesn't come near Lily. He said he'd come back with the sheriff. Tom's a good man. He won't take a child without proper cause, no matter what papers someone waves at him. Ethan turned back to her. But Mara, you need to prepare yourself. If Hastings' claims are legitimate, they're not, she said fiercely. I don't care what papers he has. Lily is my daughter, mine, and I won't let anyone take her from me. The determination in her voice seemed to satisfy something in Ethan. Then we fight. Together. The words settled between them. Together. It implied partnership, commitment, a unity that went beyond employer and employee. And looking at Ethan's face, at the resolve there, Mara felt something break open in her chest. Why are you doing this? She asked. Why are you helping us? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Because I know what it's like to lose a child. To have someone you love ripped away and be powerless to stop it. I couldn't save Sarah, couldn't save Anne, but I can help you save Lily, and I will, with everything I have. Mara stood, crossed to where he stood, and did something she'd never allowed herself before. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and real. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, he said. This is going to get harder before it gets better. Hastings struck me as the type who doesn't give up easy. He was right. Over the next 3 days, the pressure mounted. Hastings returned with the sheriff, but Tom Brennan, a weathered man with kind eyes and a stubborn streak, refused to remove Lily without a formal court order, no matter how official Hastings' papers looked. Hastings left threatening legal action, his smooth mask slipping to show the anger underneath. The ranch became a fortress. Ethan assigned Buck to watch the perimeter, made sure Lily was never alone, kept Mara close. The men, sensing the danger, rallied around their small family with fierce protectiveness. Young Tommy took to standing guard outside the cabin at night, his rifle across his knees. Old Pete started checking the barn every hour, making sure no strangers lurked in the shadows. You've got good people here, Mara told Ethan one evening as they watched Lily play with a rope in the yard, Buck hovering nearby. They're loyal, Ethan agreed. Most of them have been with me since the beginning. They loved Anne and Sarah. They're not about to let another family get torn apart if they can help it. That night, unable to sleep, Mara sat on her cabin steps and stared at the stars. She heard footsteps, knew without looking it was Ethan. Can't sleep either? He asked, settling beside her. Every time I close my eyes, I see Hastings taking her away, Mara admitted. I see her crying for me, reaching out, and I can't get to her. That's not going to happen. You can't promise that. No, he agreed, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to prevent it. And I can promise you're not alone in this anymore. Mara looked at him, at the strong lines of his face in the moonlight, at the steadiness in his eyes. When had this man become essential to her? When had his presence become the thing that steadied her when everything else shook? "Ethan," she said softly, "if this goes bad, if they take her, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let her forget me. Don't let her think I abandoned her or didn't love her enough to fight. Make sure she knows—" Her voice broke. Ethan took her face in his hands, gentle but firm. "It's not coming to that. Do you hear me? We're going to win this. You're going to keep your daughter, and she's going to grow up right here, safe and loved and free." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've already lost one family," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm not losing another. Not to death, not to disease, and sure as hell not to some smooth-talking snake with forged papers and a corrupt judge in his pocket. Another," he'd said. "Another family." The words hung between them, full of meaning neither was quite ready to examine. "The lawyer arrives tomorrow," Ethan continued. "We'll know more then. But Mara, whatever we find out, whatever this turns into, you're not facing it alone. You have me, you have this ranch, you have men who will stand between Lily and anyone who tries to take her. That's a promise." Mara leaned forward, rested her forehead against his, breathing in the scent of leather and sage and safety. For 3 years she'd been running, hiding, protecting Lily with nothing but her own wits and will. The idea of having help, of sharing the burden, was almost too much to accept. But looking at Ethan, feeling the solid warmth of him, she let herself believe it might be possible. The lawyer turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret Hayes, sent from Denver by Robert with a note that said simply, "She's the best. Listen to her." R. Margaret took one look at Hastings's papers and snorted. "Amateur forgery. Decent, but not good enough. This signature's been traced, and the seal's wrong for Judge Morrison's office. I've seen enough of his documents to know." Hope flared in Mara's chest. "So they're fake?" "The documents are fake," Margaret corrected, "but that doesn't mean the claims are. We need to verify whether James Whitfield actually had a prior marriage, whether there's really a daughter named Caroline, and whether Hastings has any legitimate connection to either." She looked at Mara. "I'll need everything you know about your husband, where he came from, any family he mentioned, places he lived before you met him." Over the next hours, Mara dredged up every detail she could remember. James had claimed to be from Missouri, said his family was dead, mentioned working in various towns across Colorado and Wyoming. It wasn't much, but Margaret wrote it all down with quick, efficient strokes. "I'll start digging," she said. "Telegraph contacts in Missouri and Colorado. Check records. See what shakes loose. In the meantime, Mr. Cole, I suggest you prepare for Hastings to escalate. Men like him don't give up when their first attempt fails." "What kind of escalation?" Ethan asked. "Could try to grab the child outright. Could bring in more authorities, claim you're harboring a fugitive or some such nonsense. Could get creative." Margaret's eyes were serious. "Keep the girl close. Keep witnesses around. And don't let him provoke you into anything that could be used against you in court." After she left, riding toward town with a list of people to contact and records to search, the waiting began. Hours stretched into days, each one tighter than the last. Hastings didn't return, but his absence felt more threatening than his presence, like a storm gathering on the horizon, building toward something terrible. Lily, mercifully, didn't understand the full danger. Mara had told her that some people had questions about their family, but that Mr. Cole and a smart lawyer were helping sort it out. The child accepted this with the resilience of someone who'd already learned that life came with uncertainties. "Mama?" she asked one afternoon while they kneaded bread together. "If we have to leave here, can we take Mr. Cole with us?" Mara's hand stilled. "Why would you think we're leaving, sweetheart?" "I heard you and Mr. Cole talking about bad men who want to take me away." Lily's small face was serious. "But I don't want to go with strangers. I want to stay here with you and Mr. Cole and the horses." Mara pulled her daughter close, flower and all. "No one's taking you anywhere, I promise." "You can't promise that," Lily said with the terrible wisdom of children who'd seen too much. "Grown-ups can't always keep promises. But you can try really hard, and that's almost as good." Later, Mara repeated the conversation to Ethan. He was silent for a long time, his jaw working. "She's right," he said finally. "We can't promise, but we can try really hard." He looked at Mara. I meant what I said before. I'm not letting anyone take her, whatever it costs. This isn't your fight, Mara said, though the protest felt hollow. Yes, it is, Ethan said firmly. The moment you walked onto this ranch, it became my fight. The moment I saw Lily look at those horses like they were magic, it became my fight. And the moment I realized I could survive losing Anne and Sarah by helping you save your daughter. He stopped, seemed to struggle with something internal. It's my fight, Mara. Let it be my fight. She saw it then, the truth neither of them had spoken. This wasn't just about protecting a child. It was about two broken people finding a reason to be whole again. It was about Ethan learning he could still protect someone, still matter, still make a difference. And it was about Mara learning she didn't have to carry everything alone. All right, she whispered. It's your fight, too. That night, Margaret returned with news that changed everything. She burst into the kitchen where Mara was cleaning up after supper, her eyes bright with discovery. James Whitfield was married before, she said without preamble, to a woman named Elizabeth Carver in Kansas City, 1870. They had a daughter, Caroline, born 1871. Elizabeth died in childbirth with a second child in 1873. The second child died too. Mara's heart sank. So Hastings had been telling the truth. But here's the interesting part, Margaret continued. James abandoned Caroline with Elizabeth's sister right after the deaths. Never sent money, never visited, essentially vanished. The sister, Rebecca Carver, raised Caroline as her own. And here's the kicker. Rebecca married a man named Thomas Hastings 5 years ago. Understanding dawned. Leonard Hastings' father? Brother, Margaret corrected. Leonard's been managing Caroline's interests since Thomas died last year, which means he's been looking for any assets James Whitfield might have left behind. She smiled grimly, including any children who might have inheritance value. But James had nothing, Mara said. He died broke in debt. There's no inheritance. Not from James, Margaret agreed, but there might be from you, or more specifically from your current situation. Tell me, Mrs. Whitfield, has Mr. Cole made any indication he might formalize your position here? Perhaps mention marriage? Adoption of your daughter? Inheritance rights? Mara's face flushed. We've never discussed anything like that. But Hastings might think you have, Margaret said. Might think he can extort money from a wealthy rancher by threatening his new family. Or, she paused significantly, he might think he can arrange a marriage between Caroline and someone with money, using Lily as leverage. The implications were sickening. He'd use a 7-year-old as a bargaining chip? Men have done worse for money, Margaret said bluntly. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Ethan, who'd been listening from the doorway, stepped into the room. We expose him. Show Judge Morrison, corrupt or not, that Hastings is trying to exploit a child for financial gain. Show that Caroline's being used as a pawn. And we establish legal protections for Lily that make her worthless to him. How? Mara asked. Ethan looked at Margaret. What would protect her absolutely? What would make it so Hastings has no claim, no leverage, no way to touch her? Margaret was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said, adoption. If you adopted Lily legally, Mrs. Whitfield's prior marriage and James's other children would become irrelevant. The child would be legally yours through adoption, not birth. Hastings would have no standing. Can we do that? Mara asked. Just adopt my own daughter? It's unusual but not impossible, especially given the circumstances, abandoned by father, questionable paternity claims, threats to the child's welfare. Margaret looked between them. There's another option, though. One that would be faster and more ironclad. What? Ethan asked. Marriage, Margaret said bluntly. If you married Mr. Cole, he could adopt Lily as his stepdaughter. Combined with evidence of James's abandonment of his first family and Hastings's exploitation attempts, it would create an unassailable legal position. Hastings would have no grounds to claim the child. The silence that followed was deafening. Mara stared at Margaret, then at Ethan, her mind reeling. That's, she started. We can't just... It's a practical solution, Margaret said. Feelings aside, it would solve the legal problem comprehensively. And it wouldn't have to be... She paused delicately. Anything more than a legal arrangement, if you preferred. Ethan's face was unreadable. Could we do the adoption without marriage? Yes, but it would take longer. Months, possibly. And Hastings could cause considerable trouble in that time. Margaret looked at them both seriously. I'm not suggesting you make a life-altering decision lightly, but I am telling you that if you want to protect this child with absolute certainty, marriage and adoption is your fastest, strongest option. After Margaret left to file preliminary paperwork in town, Mara and Ethan stood in the kitchen, the silence heavy between them. I won't ask that of you, Mara said finally. It's too much. You've already done more than— What if I wanted to? Ethan interrupted. Mara's breath caught. What? He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes serious. What if I told you I've been thinking about it anyway? Not because of Hastings or legal protections, but because somewhere in the last 6 weeks, this house started feeling like a home again. Because I wake up and actually want to face the day instead of just surviving it. Because I look at Lily and see a future instead of just a past. Ethan, let me finish. He moved closer. I'm not saying I've got it all figured out. I'm not saying it wouldn't be complicated or messy or hard, but I am saying that if we did this, if we made it legal and real, it wouldn't just be for Lily's protection. It would be because I want you both here. Because I want to be the man who stands between you and anything that tries to hurt you. Because I want— He stopped, seemed to struggle. Because I want a family again. And maybe, if you could see your way to it, that family could be us. Mara's eyes filled with tears. You barely know me. I know you work harder than anyone I've ever met. I know you love your daughter more than life itself. I know you're brave and stubborn, and you make the best apple pie in Wyoming. His voice softened. I know that when you smile, really smile, it lights up this whole ranch. And I know that I haven't felt this alive since Anne died. I'm not her, Mara whispered. I can't replace her. I'm not asking you to, Ethan said. Anne was my first love, my partner in building this place. She'll always be part of my story. But Mara, you're not a replacement. You're a new chapter. And if you'll let me, I'd like to write it with you. Mara looked at this man who'd given them shelter when they needed it most, who'd stood between them and danger without hesitation, who'd somehow become essential to her existence without her quite noticing when it happened. This is crazy, she said. Probably, he agreed. We should think about it rationally, carefully. We should, he said. But Mara, I've spent 2 years being careful and rational. It kept me alive, but it didn't make me live. You and Lily, you made me live again. And looking at him, feeling the truth of his words resonating in her own chest, Mara made a decision that was anything but careful or rational. Ask me, she said softly. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. What? If you mean it, if you really want this, ask me properly. He took her hands, his calloused fingers warm against hers. Mara Whitfield, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Would you let me be a father to Lily, a partner to you, and build something real and lasting here on this ranch? Yes, she said, and felt the word change everything. Yes, I'll marry you. They married 3 days later in the ranch house parlor, with Margaret Hayes serving as witness, and the entire ranch crew crowded into the room that hadn't seen this many people since Sarah's christening. Mara wore a simple blue dress she'd borrowed from the general store owner's wife, and Ethan had shaved for the first time in weeks, his face looking younger without the heavy stubble. Lily stood between them, her small hand clutching her mother's, her eyes wide with the solemnity of the moment. The circuit preacher spoke the words quickly and without flourish, understanding that this was about legal protection as much as sentiment. But when Ethan slipped a plain gold band onto Mara's finger, his mother's ring, brought out from wherever he'd kept it hidden, his hands trembled slightly, and Mara felt the weight of what they were doing settle over her like a cloak. You may kiss your bride, the preacher said, and for a moment, Ethan and Mara just looked at each other, both aware that this first kiss would seal something neither could take back. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Mara didn't pull away. She met him halfway, their lips touching in a kiss that was brief and chaste, but carried the promise of everything that might come after. The ranch hands erupted in cheers and whistling. Buck clapped Ethan on the back hard enough to make him stagger. Young Tommy handed Lily a bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked that morning, his face red with shyness. And old Pete, who never spoke more than 3 words at a time, stepped forward and said, "About damn time this house had a proper family again." That night, after the impromptu celebration had wound down and the men had returned to the bunkhouse, Mara stood in what was now her bedroom, the room Ethan had shared with Anne, feeling like an intruder in someone else's life. Ethan appeared in the doorway, reading her tension. "I'll sleep in the spare room," he said quietly, "until you're comfortable with whatever this becomes." "Ethan, I meant what I said about wanting you here, wanting this to be real," he continued, "but I'm not going to rush you into anything. We've got time to figure out what we are to each other beyond names on paper." Mara turned to face him, this man who was now legally her husband, legally Lily's stepfather, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Thank you for understanding." "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we file the adoption papers, and then we wait to see what Hastings does when he finds out." They didn't have to wait long. Hastings arrived the next afternoon with 2 men Mara didn't recognize, hard-faced individuals who looked more like hired muscle than legitimate authority. She was in the kitchen when they rode up, and immediately sent Lily upstairs to her new room with strict instructions to stay there no matter what she heard. By the time Mara reached the porch, Ethan was already there, his stance wide and defensive. The ranch hands had materialized from various corners of the property, forming a loose semicircle behind their boss. "Well," Hastings said, his smooth voice dripping with false pleasantry. "Congratulations on your marriage, Mrs. Cole. How convenient that you found a wealthy husband just when you needed legal protection." "State your business and leave," Ethan said flatly. "My business is the child," Hastings replied. "Caroline Whitfield has rights to her sister, rights that don't disappear just because the girl's mother remarried." "Those rights were surrendered when James Whitfield abandoned Caroline," Margaret Hayes said, stepping out from the house behind Mara. "I have documentation proving he never paid support, never visited, and never acknowledged her existence after his first wife's death. In the eyes of the law, he forfeited any parental claims." Hastings' smooth mask slipped, showing the anger beneath. "That's irrelevant. Caroline is Lily's half-sister, and as her guardian, I have the right to ensure family connections are maintained." "You have the right to nothing," Margaret said crisply. "Mrs. Cole has filed for legal adoption of Lily through her new husband, rendering any claims through James Whitfield's previous children null and void. Judge Morrison has already signed the preliminary order, pending final approval in 30 days. "Morrison's a drunk and a fool," Hastings spat, his composure cracking further. "This won't stand. I'll take it to a higher court, get a real judge to see that this whole marriage is a sham designed to keep me from what's rightfully mine." "And there it is," Ethan said quietly. "What's rightfully yours? Not Caroline's rights, not Lily's welfare. Yours." "What were you planning, Hastings? Ransom? Blackmail? Or were you going to use Lily to force some kind of financial settlement?" The 2 men with Hastings shifted, hands moving toward their guns. Instantly, the ranch hands responded, rifles appearing with practiced ease. The air thickened with tension, violence hovering on a knife's edge. "Careful," Buck said, his voice carrying clear warning. "You're outnumbered and outgunned. Whatever play you're thinking of making, think again." Hastings looked around, calculating odds, reading the determination on weathered faces. Slowly, deliberately, he smiled. But it was a cold, reptilian expression that made Mara's skin crawl. "This isn't over," he said. "You think you're safe because you got married, filed some papers? I have friends in Denver, friends in Cheyenne, people who owe me favors. I will make your life hell, Mr. Cole. I will drag your name through every court in Wyoming, and when I'm done, that ranch of yours won't be worth the dirt it sits on." "Try it," Ethan said, his voice deadly calm. "I've survived worse than you, lost more than you could take. Whatever you throw at me, I'll still be standing, and Lily will still be safe." For a long moment, Hastings stared at Ethan, seeming to measure the truth of those words. Then he jerked his horse's reins, turning away. 30 days, he called back. "You have 30 days before that adoption becomes final. A lot can happen in 30 days. They watched him ride away, his two companions flanking him, until the dust settled and the sound of hoofbeats faded. He meant that, Margaret said quietly. He's going to cause trouble. Let him try, Ethan said. But Mara could see the tension in his shoulders, the worry in his eyes. He'd stood strong for her, for Lily, but Hastings had found the vulnerability, the ranch itself. The thing Ethan had poured his life into, the legacy he'd built with Anne. Hastings would attack that because he knew it would hurt. That night, Mara found Ethan in the barn, working on tack that didn't need fixing, his movements sharp with suppressed anger. He's going to go after the ranch, she said without preamble. That's what he meant about making your life hell. I know. We should run, Mara said, even though the words felt like glass in her throat. Take Lily and disappear. You keep the ranch, your life, and we... No. Ethan's voice was hard. That's what Hastings wants. He wants you scared and scattered so he can pick you off one by one. We stay. We fight. But the ranch is just land and buildings, Ethan interrupted. Important, yes, but not more important than you and Lily. Anne would have understood that. She would have told me family comes first, always. He set down the leather he'd been working, turned to face her fully. We made vows, Mara. Maybe they started as legal protection, but I meant them, for better or worse. This is the worst part. We face it together. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. I've brought nothing but trouble to your door. You've brought life back to my house, Ethan corrected gently. You've given me a reason to keep fighting instead of just existing. Whatever comes next, I choose this. I choose you and Lily and this family we're building. Hastings can throw whatever he wants at us. We'll weather it. Over the next 2 weeks, Hastings made good on his threats. First came the lawsuit, a civil action claiming fraud in the marriage, demanding that Lily be removed from what he termed an unstable environment created through legal manipulation. Then came the business attacks. Suppliers in town suddenly reluctant to extend credit, buyers for cattle mysteriously pulling out of agreements, rumors spreading that Ethan Cole was financially underwater and about to lose everything. Margaret worked tirelessly, filing countersuits, gathering evidence of Hastings' own manipulation, building a case that would expose him for what he was. But legal battles took time, and Hastings was moving fast. He's trying to strangle you financially, Margaret explained during one of her visits. Force you to sell the ranch to cover debts he's manufacturing, create enough instability that a judge might question your ability to provide for Lily. Let him try, Ethan said grimly. This ranch has survived drought, disease, and death. It'll survive Leonard Hastings. But Mara saw the toll it was taking. Ethan worked longer hours, pushed harder, his face drawn with exhaustion. The ranch hands grumbled about suppliers refusing delivery, about buyers canceling contracts, about the whisper campaign making it harder to do business. One evening, Buck pulled Mara aside. Boss is running himself into the ground. He's trying to make up for lost contracts by working triple time, but even he can't sustain that pace. What can I do? Mara asked. Make him remember he's not alone, Buck said simply. Make him see that we're all in this together, not just him carrying the weight. That night, Mara waited until the house was quiet, then knocked softly on the spare room door where Ethan had been sleeping. Come in, his voice called. She found him at the small desk, papers spread everywhere, his eyes red from strain. I was just going through the accounts, trying to find... Stop, Mara said gently. She moved to him, took the pen from his hand, set it aside. You're going to work yourself to death, and that doesn't help anyone. I have to fix this, Ethan said, his voice rough. I have to prove Hastings wrong, show that this ranch is solid, that we can provide for Lily. We already can, Mara interrupted. We have food, shelter, warmth, and each other. That's more than most people have. The rest is just numbers on paper. Numbers on paper that determine whether we keep our home or lose everything. Then we fight smarter, not harder, Mara said. She pulled up a chair, sat beside him. Show me the accounts. Let me help. I kept my father's boarding house books for years. I know how to stretch a dollar and make numbers work. We'll figure this out together. For a moment, Ethan looked like he might argue. Then something in his expression softened, and he nodded. They worked through the night, sorting through debts, real and manufactured, finding expenses that could be cut, identifying allies who might extend credit when others wouldn't. Mara's sharp eye caught discrepancies Ethan had missed, invoices for goods never delivered, charges from suppliers they'd never used, a pattern of financial sabotage that painted Hastings' campaign in clear relief. "He's not just attacking randomly," Mara said as dawn light began filtering through the window. "He's targeting specific vulnerabilities. The feed supplier, the cattle buyer, the bank holding your note. These are all connected somehow." "Connected how?" Ethan asked. "I don't know yet, but Margaret can find out." Mara looked at the evidence they'd gathered. "And when she does, we'll have proof of his manipulation, maybe enough to end this for good." Hope flickered in Ethan's exhausted face. "You really think so?" "I think Hastings is smart, but he's also arrogant," Mara said. "He assumes everyone else is stupid. That arrogance will be his downfall." She was right. 3 days later, Margaret burst into the house with a smile that could have lit the whole ranch. "Got him," she announced triumphantly. "Hastings has been using his connections in Denver to pressure your creditors, promising them better deals on other properties if they'd squeeze you. But here's the beautiful part. He promised the same property to 3 different buyers. When I started asking questions, the whole scheme unraveled. He's facing fraud charges in Denver, and Judge Morrison is suddenly very interested in revisiting those preliminary custody orders." "What does that mean for us?" Mara asked, afraid to hope. "It means Hastings is done," Margaret said. "He's too busy trying to save himself from prison to worry about Lily. And with his credibility destroyed, Caroline's actual guardian, her Aunt Rebecca, came forward. Turns out she had no idea what her brother-in-law was planning. She's a decent woman who wants nothing to do with Hastings' schemes." "And Lily?" Ethan pressed. "The adoption will be approved," Margaret said firmly. "I've already spoken with the judge handling it. A real judge this time, not Morrison. He sees this for what it is, a mother protecting her child from a predator. He'll sign the final order within the week." The relief that flooded through Mara was so intense she had to sit down. It was over. The threat, the fear, the constant looking over her shoulder. Over. Lily was safe. They were safe. Ethan's hand found hers squeezed tight. "It's really done?" "It's really done," Margaret confirmed. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Cole. You're officially a family." After Margaret left, riding toward town to file the final paperwork, Mara and Ethan stood together on the porch, watching the sun climb over the Wyoming horizon. "I can't believe it's over," Mara said softly. "Believe it," Ethan said. "Lily's yours, ours, legally and permanently. Hastings can't touch her." "We should tell her." Mara turned toward the house, then paused. "Ethan, about us. About this marriage. Now that the legal emergency is over, if you want to—" "Don't," he interrupted gently. "Don't offer me an out I don't want." Mara looked at him, saw the certainty in his eyes, the way he held himself like he was bracing for her rejection. "I'm not offering an out," she said carefully. "I'm asking what you want this to be. What we are to each other beyond signatures on paper and a ring on my finger." Ethan took both her hands, his grip warm and sure. "I want it to be real. Not just legal, but real. I want to wake up next to you and fall asleep beside you. I want to build a life together, raise Lily together, maybe add to this family someday if you're willing. I want all of it, Mara. Every messy, complicated, beautiful bit of it." "Even though we barely know each other?" she asked, but she was smiling. "We know enough," he said. "We know we're both stubborn and proud. We know we work well together. We know we'll fight like hell to protect the people we love. And we know—" He paused, seeming to gather courage. "We know that somewhere along the way, this stopped being just about protection and became about something more." Mara's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you," Ethan said, the words coming out rough but true. "I didn't plan to, didn't expect it, but I do. I love the way you hum while you cook. I love how fierce you are when you're protecting Lily. I love your strength and your softness and the way you make this house feel like home again." He brought her hands to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. "I love you, Mara Cole. And I'm hoping maybe you could learn to love me too. Mara felt tears spill over, but they were good tears this time. Healing tears. I already do, she whispered. I fought it, told myself it was too fast, too complicated, but Ethan, I love you. I love your steadiness, your honor, the way you love so deeply it nearly broke you when you lost them. I love that you took us in and made us family without hesitation. I love, her voice broke. I love who I am when I'm with you, who Lily is, who we all are together. He kissed her then, properly this time, with none of the hesitation of their wedding kiss. This was claiming and promise, desire and tenderness all tangled together. Mara kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, gratitude and hope and love and the fierce joy of finding home after years of wandering. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lily's voice came from the doorway. Does this mean Mr. Cole is really my papa now? They turned to find her standing there in her nightgown, her gray eyes wide and hopeful. Ethan crouched down to her level, his face serious. Only if you want me to be, he said gently. I know I can't replace your first father, and I'm not trying to. But if you'll have me, I'd be honored to be your papa. To take care of you and your mama, to teach you about horses and ranching, to be there when you need me. Lily studied him for a long moment, then threw her arms around his neck with the full trust that only children possess. I want you to be my papa. I've wanted it since the first day when you let me brush the horses. Ethan's arms came around her, holding tight, and Mara saw tears streak down his weathered face. He'd lost one daughter to death and gained another through choice. And the symmetry of it, the terrible beauty of grief transformed into love, made Mara's heart ache in the best way. Then it's settled, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. You're mine, and I'm yours, and we're a family. That afternoon, the three of them rode out to the far pasture, where wildflowers grew in profusion and the view stretched for miles. Ethan showed Lily how to sit a horse properly, how to move with the animal instead of against it. Mara watched them together, her daughter's laughter, her husband's patient instruction, and felt something settle deep in her bones. This was what she'd been running toward all along, not away from danger, but toward this moment, this place, this family. Mama, Lily called, look, I'm doing it. I see you, sweetheart, Mara called back, her heart full to bursting. That evening, they had a proper family dinner, just the three of them, in the kitchen that had become the heart of their home. Lily chattered about the horses, about her new room, about Buck teaching her to rope a fence post. Ethan listened with the attentiveness of someone storing every detail, every moment, against future need. After Lily went to bed, Mara and Ethan sat together on the porch, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. The stars wheeled overhead, vast and infinite, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called. Are you happy? Ethan asked quietly. Mara thought about the question, about the long road that had brought her here, the mistakes and hardships, the fear and running, the desperate hope that had kept her moving forward. All of it had led to this porch, this man, this moment. Yes, she said simply, for the first time in years, I'm truly happy. Good, Ethan said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen, feeling the solid reality of their life together. There would be challenges ahead. There always were. The ranch would require constant work. Lily would grow and change, and they would have to navigate the complexities of building a marriage that had started with necessity but needed to become something deeper. But looking at the house behind them, warm with lamplight, filled with the promise of family, Mara knew they would face it together. No more running, no more hiding, just the steady work of building a life worth living. Inside, Lily slept peacefully in her room, surrounded by the dolls and books they'd bought her. In the barn, the horses rested easy, safe, and well-tended. And on the porch, two people who'd learned the hard way that life could take everything sat together in the darkness, holding tight to what they'd found. Not perfection, not certainty, but something real and solid and worth fighting for. And that, Mara thought, as Ethan's hand found hers, was more than enough. The adoption papers arrived on a Thursday morning, official and final. bearing the seal of the territorial court. Margaret delivered them herself, her usually stern face softened with genuine pleasure as she handed the documents to Mara and Ethan. Lily Rose Cole, Margaret read from the certificate, legally adopted daughter of Ethan James Cole and Mara Elizabeth Cole. Congratulations. She's yours in every way that matters now. Mara traced the names with trembling fingers, hardly believing it was real. After years of fear and uncertainty, of looking over her shoulder and waiting for someone to tear her world apart, she held proof that Lily belonged to them, that no one could take her away ever again. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything you did. We couldn't have—" "You would have found a way," Margaret interrupted gently. "People like you always do. I just helped speed things along." She gathered her papers, preparing to leave. "Oh, and one more piece of news you'll enjoy. Hastings was arrested in Denver yesterday. Turns out his fraud went deeper than we knew. He'll be spending the next several years in prison if the prosecutor gets his way." "And Caroline?" Ethan asked. "The actual girl he was supposedly representing?" "Safe with her Aunt Rebecca, who sends her apologies for her brother-in-law's actions. She knew nothing about his schemes." Margaret paused at the door. "Rebecca also wanted you to know that if Lily ever wants to meet her half-sister when she's older, the door is open. No pressure, no expectations. Just the possibility of connection if both girls want it someday." After Margaret left, Mara stood holding the papers, feeling the weight of everything they represented. Freedom, safety, home. "We should tell her," Ethan said, nodding toward the stairs where Lily was playing in her room. They found her arranging her small collection of belongings, the porcelain doll from her father, the books Ethan had bought her, the ribbon Buck had given her for her hair. She looked up when they entered, her face brightening. "Mama, Papa, look, I organized everything by color." "Papa." She'd started using the word naturally about a week ago, and every time Ethan heard it, something in his expression softened in a way that made Mara's heart squeeze. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Mara said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "We have something to show you, something important." Lily's face grew serious as she studied the papers they handed her. She couldn't read all the words yet, but she understood enough. "This means I'm really yours?" she asked, her voice small. "Forever?" "Forever," Ethan confirmed, kneeling beside her. "You're our daughter now, legal and official. Cole is your name, this ranch is your home, and nothing and nobody can change that." Lily looked between them, her gray eyes swimming with tears. "Even though my first papa is gone? Even though we're not blood?" "Blood doesn't make a family," Mara said firmly, pulling her daughter close. "Love does. Choice does. The decision to stand together no matter what comes. That's what makes us family." "We chose you," Ethan added, his hand gentle on Lily's hair. "Your mama and I both chose you, and we'll keep choosing you every single day for the rest of our lives." Lily threw her arms around both of them, and they held her there in the little room that had once belonged to Sarah, in the house that had learned to live again, and let the moment settle into their bones. This was what healing looked like. Not forgetting the past, but building something new alongside it. Not replacing what was lost, but honoring it by loving what remained. That afternoon, the ranch hands gathered in the yard as word spread about the finalized adoption. Buck organized an impromptu celebration, dragging out the whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. Young Tommy strung up lanterns even though it was barely past noon. Old Pete produced a fiddle from somewhere and began tuning it with practiced fingers. "Didn't know you played," Ethan said, surprised. "Haven't in years," Pete admitted. "But seems like the right time to start again." By evening, half the territory had shown up. Neighbors who'd kept their distance during Hastings' attacks now arrived with covered dishes and genuine smiles, apologizing for their caution, but ready to celebrate the Cole family's victory. The ranch owner from the next valley over brought a calf as a gift for Lily, saying every ranch kid needed a creature of their own to raise. The general store owner's wife presented Mara with a quilt she'd been piecing together secretly, each square representing something about their journey: a horse, a kitchen, a house, a family. "You're one of us now," she said simply. "Wyoming takes care of its own." As the sun set and the lanterns glowed warm against the darkening sky, Pete's fiddle sang out the first notes of a reel, Couples began to dance in the yard, boots kicking up dust, laughter rising into the clear air. Buck grabbed Lily and spun her around until she shrieked with delight. Young Tommy worked up the courage to ask a neighbor girl to dance, his face flaming red when she said yes. Ethan held out his hand to Mara. "Dance with me, Mrs. Cole." "I'm not very good," she warned, but took his hand anyway. "Neither am I," he admitted, pulling her into the flow of movement. "But I don't think anyone's keeping score tonight." They moved together awkwardly at first, then found their rhythm, their bodies learning the language of partnership the way their lives had. Through trial and adjustment and the willingness to keep trying. Around them, the ranch celebrated, the house glowed with light and life, and overhead the stars began their eternal dance. "This is what Anne wanted," Ethan said quietly, his voice pitched for Mara's ears alone. "When we first built this place, she said she wanted it to be full of people and noise and joy, said a ranch should feel alive, should be the kind of place where folks gathered and felt welcome." He looked around at the celebration. She'd be happy to see this, to see the house living again. "Tell me about her," Mara said, and meant it. "I want to know about the woman who built this place with you." So as they danced, Ethan talked. He told her about Anne's laugh, how it started quiet, then built until it shook her whole body. About her stubborn insistence on learning to rope cattle, even though everyone said women shouldn't. About the way she'd sung lullabies to Sarah, making up verses that got progressively sillier until the baby giggled instead of sleeping. About her practical nature and her soft heart, her strength and her tenderness. "She sounds wonderful," Mara said when he finished. "She was," Ethan agreed. "And so are you. Different, but wonderful in your own way. I think you two would have been friends." "I think so too," Mara said, and believed it. There was room in her heart for both truths, that Ethan had loved Anne deeply, and that he loved her now. Love wasn't finite, didn't diminish with sharing. It expanded, made space, grew to accommodate everyone it touched. Later, when Lily had fallen asleep on a blanket in Buck's lap, and the older guests had begun to drift home, Ethan led Mara away from the celebration, through the barn and out to the far pasture where they'd ridden that first day as a family. The moon was full, painting everything silver, and the distant mountains stood like sentinels against the sky. Ethan turned to face her, his hands gentle on her waist. "I have something for you," he said. "Been waiting for the right moment." He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a delicate gold locket. Inside were two tiny photographs, one of Lily and one of Mara herself, taken at their wedding. "So you can carry us with you," Ethan said as he fastened it around her neck. "Wherever you go, whatever you do, you're not alone anymore. You have us." Mara touched the locket, feeling the weight of it settle against her heart. "When did you—" "Ask the photographer to make extras at the wedding," Ethan admitted. "Had the locket made special in town. Wanted you to have something that was just yours, something that reminded you that you're loved." "Ethan Cole," Mara said, her voice breaking. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "Pretty sure I'm the lucky one," he said. "You walked into my life when I'd given up on living and taught me how to hope again. Taught me that loving someone new doesn't betray the people we lost. It honors them by proving we learned how to love from them." He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise. Not the tentative kiss of their wedding or the passionate discovery of new love, but something richer, the kiss of two people who'd chosen each other deliberately, who knew each other's scars and loved them anyway, who were building something meant to last. When they returned to the ranch, the celebration was winding down. The last guests were saying their goodbyes, promising to visit soon, welcoming the Cole family properly into the community's embrace. Buck had carried Lily inside and tucked her into bed, the calf tethered nearby so she'd see it first thing in the morning. Mara stood in the kitchen, her kitchen now, and looked around at the evidence of the evening, dishes to wash, floors to sweep, all the comfortable debris of life well lived. A year ago, she'd been running with no destination, desperate and afraid. Now she had a home, a family, a place in the world that was entirely her own. "Leave it until morning," Ethan said from the doorway. "Come to bed." There was invitation in his voice, but no pressure. They'd been married for nearly a month now, but still slept in separate rooms, both aware that legal vows were one thing and physical intimacy another. Neither had rushed it, both understanding that some things couldn't be forced. But tonight, Looking at her husband silhouetted in the lamplight, Mara felt ready. "Your room or mine?" she asked softly. Ethan's eyes darkened with understanding. "Ours," he said. "From now on, it's ours." They climbed the stairs together, and when Ethan opened the door to the room he'd once shared with Anne, Mara saw he'd changed things. New curtains replaced the old, a different quilt covered the bed, small alterations that honored the past while making space for the future. "I wanted it to feel like ours," he explained. "Not like you were stepping into someone else's life, but like we were starting our own." Mara turned to him, saw the vulnerability in his face, the hope he was trying to hide. She crossed to where he stood and began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers steady despite the hammering of her heart. "I love you," she said. "Not because you saved us, not because you gave us a home, but because of who you are. Your honor, your strength, the way you love with your whole heart, even after it's been broken. I love you, Ethan Cole. And I choose you. I choose this life with you." "I love you too," he said, his hands coming up to cup her face. "More than I thought I could love again. You brought light back into my darkness, Mara. You and Lily both. You're my second chance, my new beginning, and I swear I'll spend every day proving I deserve you." "You already do," she whispered, and drew him down to her. They came together with tenderness and passion, with the careful exploration of two people learning each other's bodies and hearts. There was awkwardness and laughter, adjustment and discovery, the beautiful imperfection of new intimacy. And when they finally lay tangled together in the moonlight, both breathing hard, both smiling, it felt like the final piece clicking into place. This was home. This was family. This was the life they'd built together from broken pieces and stubborn hope. The next morning, Mara woke to find Ethan already gone, his side of the bed cold. For a moment, panic fluttered. Had he regretted it, changed his mind? Then she heard voices from downstairs, smelled coffee, and something baking. She dressed quickly and descended to find Ethan and Lily in the kitchen, making breakfast together. Lily was perched on a stool, carefully cracking eggs into a bowl while Ethan supervised. Both of them were dusted with flour, and something that might have been pancake batter was splattered on the wall. "We're making breakfast for you," Lily announced proudly. "Papa said you should sleep late because you work so hard." "We might have made a bit of a mess," Ethan admitted, looking sheepish. "Turns out cooking is harder than it looks." Mara surveyed the disaster zone that was her kitchen and started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter that came from pure joy. "It's perfect," she declared. "Absolutely perfect." They ate the slightly burned pancakes and oversalted eggs together at the kitchen table, the three of them. And it was the best meal Mara had ever tasted. Because it wasn't about the food. It was about the fact that they were together, that they were trying, that they were building this life one imperfect moment at a time. After breakfast, they took Lily out to see her calf properly. Buck had penned it in a small corral near the barn, and the little creature bawled when it saw them approaching. "What should we name her?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "That's your decision," Ethan said. "She's your responsibility to name and raise." Lily thought hard, her face scrunched with concentration. "Hope," she said finally. "I want to name her Hope, because Mama says hope is what kept us going when things were hard, and now we're here, and everything is good." Mara felt tears prick her eyes. Out of the mouths of children, she thought again. Such wisdom in such a small package. "Hope is a perfect name," Ethan said, his voice gruff with emotion. He hoisted Lily onto the fence rail. "Now let me teach you about taking care of a calf. First thing you need to know is they're stubborn as mules and twice as trouble." Mara left them there, father and daughter, learning the rhythms of ranch life together. She returned to the house, to the kitchen that needed cleaning, and set to work. But instead of feeling burdened by the endless tasks, she felt grateful. This was her kitchen to clean, her house to maintain, her family to feed and care for. These weren't obligations, they were privileges. As she worked, she heard horses approaching. Looking out, she saw a familiar carriage. Robert Cole, Ethan's brother, arriving with his wife, Catherine. Mara dried her hands and went out to greet them, curious what had brought them all the way from Denver. Robert dismounted, looking uncomfortable. Catherine remained in the carriage, her perfect posture rigid with what might have been disapproval or might have been nervousness. Mrs. Cole, Robert said formally, I hope we're not intruding. Not at all, Mara replied, though she kept her voice carefully neutral. This was the man who'd told Ethan to abandon the ranch, to give up on the life he'd built. I came to apologize, Robert said abruptly, for the things I said when I visited before, for pushing Ethan to sell, to move on, to forget. He looked toward the barn, where Ethan and Lily's laughter could be heard. I was wrong. This ranch, it's not just land and buildings, it's his legacy, his life, and you. He turned back to Mara. You've given him something I thought he'd lost forever. Hope, purpose, a reason to keep fighting. Your brother gave us far more than we gave him, Mara said quietly. He gave us safety when we had none, a home when we were wandering, a family when we were alone. Nevertheless, Robert continued, I wanted to make amends. I've arranged for new contracts with suppliers in Denver, ones Hastings can't touch, and I've convinced several buyers I work with to consider purchasing cattle from the ranch at fair prices. It's not charity, he added quickly, seeing Mara's expression. It's good business. Ethan raises quality stock, and my associates need reliable suppliers. Everyone benefits. Why now? Mara asked. What changed? Robert smiled slightly. Margaret Hayes sent me a very pointed letter explaining exactly what had happened with Hastings and how I'd inadvertently contributed to the problem by undermining Ethan's standing in the community. She suggested that if I wanted to maintain any relationship with my brother, I should correct my mistakes before it was too late. Margaret's nothing if not direct, Mara agreed. She also sent word of your marriage and adoption, and when I realized Ethan had found a family again, had chosen to fight for something instead of just enduring, Robert's voice softened. I remembered the brother I grew up with, the one who always chose the hard right over the easy wrong. I thought I'd lost him when Anne and Sarah died. I'm glad to know he's still in there somewhere. Ethan appeared then, Lily on his shoulders, both of them stopping short when they saw Robert. Brother, Ethan said carefully. Brother, Robert replied. I came to apologize and to offer support if you'll accept it. Business contracts, legal assistance, whatever you need. No strings attached. Ethan set Lily down gently, his eyes searching Robert's face for sincerity. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded slowly. Appreciate that, he said, and I accept, not because I can't manage on my own, but because family should help family, even when they've disagreed. The two men shook hands, and if the gesture carried the weight of years of misunderstanding and hurt, it also carried the possibility of healing. Catherine finally emerged from the carriage, her silk dress impractical as ever, but her expression softer than Mara had seen at their first meeting. Your home is lovely, she said, and seemed to mean it. Truly. I'm sorry I didn't see it before. Over lunch, which Mara threw together from what she had on hand, her skills making even simple food taste special, the awkwardness gradually eased. Robert and Ethan talked business and cattle, finding common ground they'd ignored before. Catherine asked Lily about her calf, about her life on the ranch, and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. And Mara watched it all unfold, seeing the mending of family bonds, the rebuilding of trust. By the time Robert and Catherine prepared to leave that evening, something had shifted. The Cole brothers stood together on the porch, not as adversaries, but as family. You'll visit again? Ethan asked. If we're welcome, Robert said. Always, Ethan confirmed. This house, Anne always said it should be full of people. Guess it's time I remembered that. After they left, Mara found Ethan standing in the barn, grooming one of the horses with methodical strokes. You all right? She asked. Better than all right, he said. Feel like pieces are coming together. The ranch is secure, Lily's legally ours, my brother and I are talking again. It's more than I dared hope for 6 months ago. 6 months ago we hadn't met yet, Mara pointed out. Exactly, Ethan said, setting down the brush and pulling her into his arms. Best thing I ever did was open that door when you knocked. Changed my whole life. Changed mine too, Mara said, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I'd stopped believing in happy endings, thought the best I could hope for was survival. And now? Now I believe in second chances, she said, in new beginnings, in families built from choice and love instead of just blood, in homes that heal the broken and shelter the lost. That night they gathered in the parlor, Ethan, Mara, and Lily, and made a decision together. They would open Sarah's room properly, not to erase her memory, but to honor it by letting it live again. Lily could have her toys to play with, her books to read, her space to grow into, and in the corner they would keep Sarah's rocking horse and her favorite doll, preserved and cherished, a reminder of the little girl who'd lived there first. She'd want another child to enjoy her things, Ethan said, tears streaming down his face as he opened the door he'd kept closed for 2 years. Anne would want it too. They'd hate knowing their stuff was just gathering dust while Lily slept in a smaller room. So they moved Lily's belongings into the bigger space, carefully integrating Sarah's treasures with the new occupant's possessions. Lily handled everything with reverence, understanding somehow that she was being trusted with something precious. "I'll take good care of it all," she promised Ethan seriously. "I'll remember that another little girl loved these things first, and I'll love them too in her honor." "Thank you, sweetheart," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "That means more than you know." Standing in the doorway, watching Lily arrange her new room while Ethan guided her, Mara felt the last piece of her heart settle into place. This was what healing looked like, not forgetting the pain, but learning to hold it alongside the joy, not replacing what was lost, but making room for what was found. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch work continued, cattle to tend, fences to mend, hay to harvest. But now there was laughter mixed with the labor, conversation over meals, evenings spent as a family instead of in isolated loneliness. Lily learned to ride properly, to rope a fence post, to help with chores in ways that made her feel essential. Ethan taught her everything he'd once taught Sarah, his voice growing stronger with each lesson, his smiles coming easier. And Mara flourished. She expanded the kitchen garden, started preserving food for winter, organized the household with the competence of someone who'd finally found her place. The ranch hands treated her with affection and respect. The neighbors included her in their gatherings, sought her advice, welcomed her fully into the community. One evening in late autumn, as the first snow began to fall, the three of them sat together on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the flakes drift down like grace. "Tell me something true," Lily said, the phrase that had become her way of asking for stories. "Something true," Ethan repeated thoughtfully. He looked at Mara, then at Lily, then out at the ranch spreading before them, his life's work, his legacy, now shared with people he'd chosen to love. "Something true is that I thought my life was over when I lost my first family. I thought I'd just exist until I died, going through the motions without ever really living again." "And?" Lily prompted. "And I was wrong," Ethan said simply. "Because you and your mama showed me that life doesn't end when we lose people we love. It changes, yes. It hurts, absolutely. But it also continues, and sometimes, if we're very lucky, it gives us a second chance to be happy." "Are you happy, Papa?" Lily asked. "Happier than I ever thought I'd be again," he said honestly. "You two are my second chance, my new beginning, and I'm grateful every single day that I was brave enough to open that door when you knocked." "Me too," Lily said, snuggling closer, "because this is the best home I've ever had." Later, after Lily was asleep and Mara and Ethan lay tangled together in their bed, Mara spoke into the darkness. "Do you ever regret it? Taking us in, marrying me, all of it?" "Never," Ethan said immediately. "Not for a single second. Do you?" "No," Mara said. "I regret the things that brought us here, losing James, the running, the fear, but I don't regret where we ended up. This ranch, this life, you, none of it feels like settling or compromise. It feels like coming home." "It is home," Ethan confirmed, "for all of us. And it always will be." Outside, the snow continued falling, covering the ranch in peaceful white, muffling sounds and softening edges. Inside, the house glowed with warmth and light, every room a testament to love rebuilt and family reclaimed. In the barn, the horses rested easy. In the bunkhouse, the ranch hands slept sound. And in the big house, in the bedroom that had learned to hold new love alongside old memories, Two people who'd survived impossible loss held each other close and dared to believe in tomorrow. The door that had changed everything stood solid against the Wyoming winter, no longer a barrier between grief and hope, but a threshold crossed, a choice made, a family born. Behind it lived three people who'd learned that home wasn't a place you found. It was something you built, one day at a time, with the people you chose to love. And in the morning, they would wake and begin again, together, building their life in a house that no longer echoed with absence but rang with presence, no longer haunted by ghosts, but filled with the beautiful, messy, imperfect reality of a family that had found each other against all odds and decided to stay. This was their story, written in shared meals and hard work, in laughter and tears, in choosing each other every single day. It wasn't a fairy tale with a neat ending. It was something better. It was real. And it was theirs, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.